Welcome to Anything Goes. I'm your five wing four host, Madison.
I'm your nine wing one host, Caden, and
Uh,
we're talking about the Enneagram in
mm,
this podcast where we talk about the Enneagram.
yep. I'm just gonna jump in with our intro. So we were gonna try and pre-record a bunch of episodes like last month, and we mentioned that last time. And then life got in the way, and so we're pre-recording them this month. So I'm still gonna give the date that we're actually recording this in case some like crazy like
You shouldn't
newsworthy.
don't even jinx it. Why?
Well,
Why the world's gonna end tomorrow now just because you said that?
listen, I after 2020, I can't because it's still rolling over. Like there was the like Georgia dude, the hate crime Asian. Have you seen that?
That was very intense. The
So
Chauvin trial
yeah,
happening this week, that was also very intense.
yeah.
It's just been a very intense week.
It's been an intense year and like 3 months. Like or well, I guess no, because kind of the COVID stuff happened. Well, no, there was some weird stuff happening at the beginning of 2020 because there was like, is World War III happening? That kind of stuff. So
I'm gonna
like,
claim that it has been an intense lifetime.
honestly, you know what? You're kind of right because like
I feel like
our
we just hit the ground running with this one.
yeah, our specifically around our age because like we kind of were very young with like 9/11 and shit like that. And so we've just been trucking through.
Yeah.
Mass school shootings and just all of that. That's
Global climate change.
yeah.
It's 52 degrees today, and on Monday there was a snowstorm.
Yeah. It was like it was 80 degrees for us. Well, 78. 78 degrees for us Wednesday. Was it Wednesday? No, wait, not this past Wednesday, the Wednesday before that cuz we had a day off. So, it's a mess. But yeah, so we're recording this on March 18th, 2021. So if shit hits the fan after that and we don't talk about it and we don't talk about it for like 6 months, that's because we're gonna try and pre-record a bunch of episodes. Um, so couple of warnings. We are not safe for work, so might want to listen with
Put
some
those
headphones
headphones
in.
in.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're not Christian.
Nope.
We're very gay and LGBTQ friendly. And we are not Enneagram professionals, just Enneagram enthusiasts. Um, yeah. We read
Uh,
books on occasion and
you read
try.
books. I skim.
Yeah.
It's what college taught me.
hmm Um, I'll go ahead and let you introduce our
Yep.
Patreon.
Um, so we do have a Patreon if you would like to support our content. If you want more of it, there are three different tiers that you can give at. The contributor is $5. I think it's set up as monthly, but there's obviously no expectation for you to continue. If you want to give a one-time donation, go ahead. We appreciate any and all monetary contributions. You can also give at a $12 level. And if you want to get really crazy with it and want us to become the most professional professionals, if you give us, what is it,
$600.
$600,
hmm
Maddie will join a cult, aka the Enneagram Society of whatever,
It's the
and
Arca Institute,
the Arica Institute
which is
is a long time dream of hers since she was a little girl. She grew up and she said, you know what? When I get older, what I want to do is join the Arica Institute, and you could make that happen with a one-time contribution of $600. Yeah, so if you do that, she'll join a cult for you.
hmm
But if you're not into that and you just want to tell us how awesome we are or how we're horrible at our not jobs, you can also just find us on social media. We have an email, anythinggoes@gmail.com. We have Twitter. We have a Discord. We have a Reddit account where we post our questions of the month.
We don't
Uh,
have a Reddit account yet. I've just
we
been
don't.
posting out of
Maddie has a
mine.
Reddit account where she posts stuff. You can go Reddit
Yeah.
stalk her and
Yeah.
find and comment on stuff.
Yeah, if
I
you
lied.
want, my profile is Maddie Monroe. So
Giving away your aliases here, kid.
giving away my
You're,
alias. I don't mind because I mention the podcast whenever I go. Like all of my questions like are titled info for a podcast. But yeah.
uh,
So if you see a post from Maddie Monroe in the Enneagram subreddit, it's me. You will be featured in the podcast.
your claim to fame.
Mhm.
Speaking of our subreddit questions,
Mhm.
you want to talk about what question we posed to the broad world of the internet this month?
Yes, so our question of the month was specifically for head types, which are fives, sixes, and seven, which is what this episode is going to be about, the head intelligence center. And so the question was, what is your relationship to conspiracy theories? Do you believe any? If so, what ones? And first of all, before we even jump into the question, I wanted to say it's incredibly interesting that so every other time I've posted a question that was aimed at a specific group of people, so like the five, sixes, and sevens in the Enneagram subreddit, I would usually get other people answering, like the occasional like nine and the like two question, Um, in this
Those
question,
damn nines.
well, no, but like but like any like I would always have like an outside someone chiming in something, maybe about whatever number we were talking about or just answering it for themselves or whatever. This is the only time I posed a question where I exclusively got answers from the groups I was looking for. I only got answers from five, sixes, and sevens. Um,
Other people won't admit to fucking with conspiracy theories,
yeah, I don't know. Um,
even though they really do.
yeah. Um, so uh some running themes that I found when like looking at this is that sixes were the most like the trends were sixes were always the most distrustful, especially after all of the Trump stuff. Fives were the most enthusiastic about them, not necessarily admitting to believing in them, but saying that they um, found them interesting or like to read about them or um, you know something along those lines. Sevens were kind of torn. They found them fun to read, but also found them kind of dangerous. So jumping in from there, I think the most interesting thing about this is that I don't think any one type is more or less likely to believe conspiracy theories. I think we're all equally likely, but it's how we get into them. Um, and so I think the fives, sixes, and sevens are more likely to create them and are more likely to get wrapped up in them and not really realize how wrapped up in them that they're getting. And I think we're the most kind of judgmental about seeing other people and thinking, oh, they're in a conspiracy theory, while kind of sitting back and it's like, oh, well, ours is just logic. What do you think?
I think it's interesting, and I guess my question to you would be because you came up with this question.
Mm-hmm.
Why specifically this? Is that just going to have you reiterate like what do you think the relationship is between conspiracy theories and head types? Because I have my own like take on it.
So for me, what had me thinking about this was like the difference between my father and like myself and the approach that we take to conspiracy theories. So my father kind of like fell down the like Trump well, if you will. Um, and so, like I said, the approach to how people get involved into some of these conspiracy theories is different. So for um, my dad doesn't really believe anything that you read on the internet, right? But it started with Fox News. Fox News, TV channel, upright, broadcasting, generally tends with his views. So, like, of course he should trust him because my father's a one, like, that's right, that's good, black and white. You should believe what Fox News tells you because that's a good,
That's
safe
their job to
source.
tell the truth. Why would they
Mhm.
lie to you?
Yeah, so that I think is how ones get into it, like trusting an incorrect source, right? Or
Mhm,
like misplacing trust. And I think all the other types would have different reasons for getting involved in them. Um, but I think what the five, sixes, and sevens comes from is um, we're all a little bit more removed from our gut and like instinct kind of center. Um, like sevens being the most in touch with it out of all of the head centers. Um, but because we're still removed from it, what happens is we still have those instincts happening and those gut feelings happening. But what happens is in our minds, we like rationalize them and like
mhm,
think them through and like kind of convert it into facts or, well, facts in quotation marks because they're not really facts.
mhm.
And then I think we separate ourselves because it's a very like intellectual, like sixes are like, oh, I don't trust anyone, like I don't just outright trust authority figures, I'm very distrustful. And like fives are like, oh, I'm very logical and I would think things. So we kind of remove ourselves from the term conspiracy theory and remove ourselves from that stigma and like kind of make fun of others who are like believing in conspiracy theories while doing it ourselves.
So you were trying to stir up some shit and show head types how, hypocritical they are, is
Yeah,
what you're saying.
yeah, because what happened is in myself, I realized I was doing it. I don't think I was doing it to an healthy degree, but then here I am. I'm trying to say that, and I'll tell you my experience with it is so the one conspiracy theory that I really like is the Mandela effect, which is there are a bunch of them, but it's like people misremembering things. And so there are a bunch of conspiracy theories about why that's happening. That the government has changed those words and they like change. So like for instance, like lots of people remember chartreuse as being red or like a reddish color. And um and then vermilion as like a green color, right? When in reality it's the opposite. And so like that's the one that like really got with me and like fucked with me because it like I had a vivid memory of like chartreuse being red and like learning that, right?
Mhm,
And so a lot of people have those same kind of instances with like the Berenstain Bears or like Kit Kat or things like that. So there are a bunch of different theories as a bunch of different conspiracy theories as to why that happens. And so for me, I had watched like Netflix's The Mind Explained, and they talked about like how our mind like maps different things and how you can get like stuck in kind of like memory ruts and how memory is fallible. And I so here's what I did. I kind of tried to remove myself from it and be like, "Oh, I'm not like theorizing or anything. I just have a hypothesis." And that's how I mentally removed myself from it. But my hypothesis was that because so many of us are misremembering the same things, there's probably something in the way our brain encodes that information that makes it happen. And so if we studied it with like I don't know, I'm not a brain scientist. I don't fucking know. But I if this hypothesis were handed into the right hands, that there probably would be something that they would find in the way our brains encode that kind of information with misremembering. And so I got kind of wrapped up in that, trying to find articles to see if anyone had done it or had studied it that way or anything like that. Because it, like, when it happened, like when I found out that chartreuse was green, it like really freaked me out.
Mhm.
So I got kind of wrapped up in it. But I removed myself by being like, "Oh, it's not a conspiracy theory for me. I'm just creating a hypothesis. Like I know it's not tested or like whatever." You
I'm
know?
gonna point to several things. First of all, I wanna go back to that you've got freaked out when you found out that what you thought was fact was incorrect.
Mhm.
And I think that that is a key point in a lot of this like conspiracy theory stuff. Because for me, conspiracy theories aren't actually about facts at all. You can put whatever facts you want, whatever things you want. Fundamentally, it's about belief, right?
Mhm.
Like, why do people believe? That's the verb there. You believe conspiracy theories.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it's interesting to talk about it in the context of someone who has built their identity around being a rational or intellectual being,
Mhm.
uh, because there's a dissonance that I think is inherent in all of the conspiracy theories, where there are juxtapositions of things that don't make sense
Mhm.
constantly, and you're asked to believe. And I do think that head types, like, we all spend our time in that space,
Mhm.
that, like, it can be both this thing and this thing that are contradictory, but head types are specifically have, like, an interaction with that space that's very interesting, because you do want to have logic, reason, rationale. You want things to make sense in a certain way,
Mhm.
that, having very complicated answers. I don't know if I'm making sense here,
No,
but
you're
for
making
me,
complete sense to me at
in my
least.
brain, when you said that, like, no, like, having something that you knew to be true actually be false as a fundamentally, like, altering experience for other people, like, that would, yeah, like, that would shake me up. I'd be like, oh, that's weird, but I wouldn't think anything of it. It wouldn't alter who I am as a person. But um I think part of the concern and draw is the idea that you don't have actually, um, you as a five, you don't have the information that you need to make an accurate decision.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that happens to a lot of the head types. I think you're right because like the sixes, if that would happen to a six, they'd feel completely insecure in their surroundings and like what is real and what isn't and things like
And
that.
it's fundamentally about fear,
Mhm.
right? Conspiracy
Mm.
theories are always about fear because they're always about the hypothetical. They're
Mhm.
always about the potential possibility of a future that you can't know.
Mhm.
And that is intrinsically tied to how fear works.
Which is interesting because I have a quote that I pulled out because I feel like there's the most pushback. So I feel like we're the most kind of easily wrapped up or easy to create them, you know? But there's also the most pushback against the idea that we are just believing conspiracy theories. And so I have a quote here, if I can find it. Um, so this person said, um, I generally like learning about conspiracy theories. I don't know how many of them I actually believe, but I don't know how many things I actually quote believe anyway. I think it's lazy to say something can be debunked by science because 200 years ago, science told us that Europeans were smarter because their skulls were larger. I, s- I say that to say clearly, even science is subject to human context. Gasp. I think conspiracies are born of the tension in identity work. So when our sense of who we are is threatened, we're more likely to believe in conspiracies. So this thread should probably belong to twos, threes, and fours. They're the ones with identity issues.
I agree 100% until the last sentence.
Exactly, and that, like, the removal of, like, "Oh, but I could never have an identity crisis." That's
Or
a
even that I
hard
don't
thing.
have an identity
Yeah.
that can be like, if you have something, it can be threatened, right?
Mhm. Yes. And in the very thing where they're just like, "Oh, conspiracies, whatever. What even is science?" is very conspiracy theory kind of logic. Um,
But none of what they were saying was wrong in the
well,
sense
no.
that yes, science is a social construct in the way
Uh-huh.
that it's a product of
Mhm,
like the
mhm,
sociological context of its time,
mhm,
but also that the desire and need to have a solution,
mhm,
I think, is what draws people to conspiracy theories because
mhm,
they promise to have answers.
mhm,
And part of the thing about fear
mhm,
that I was going to get to is like fear is a complicated emotion
mhm,
because it's both inherently rational and irrational.
mhm,
And I think about sixes here because you can be either phobic or counterphobic as a six.
mhm,
Um, and there's that dichotomy where there's the dissonance there that you can't
mhm,
connect those two. You can't accept the fact that your fear is both irrational and rational at the same time, and that's okay.
mhm. But yeah, and so I thought this one was just perfect to sum up that dissonance of like like in his own like what he believes, he's pulling the like conspiracy theory stuff, but then is like this should only apply to twos, threes, and fours because they have identity issues. Like that whole twist was just that cognitive dissonance. Like they were on the same wavelength, and then they were like, "But this question shouldn't be for us. Like I'm a five. Or I don't remember what their type was. They're like, I'm a head type.
You're
I'm
assuming that
above
they're a
this."
five because you relate.
I'll try and look up what they were, um but I found that one very interesting for that reason. And like I pulled up like another like couple of quotes that are doing kind of the same thing where they're like, so here's a quote. I've never really been interested in conspiracy theories. I don't trust them because they obviously can't be 100% right. Some kind of annoy me, especially if it involves someone that I look up to. Somebody mentioned they believe in aliens. I do too. I also believe in mermaids. I'm a six, BT dubs. Um, so this six is like, I don't like conspiracy theories. I don't really trust them. I believe in mermaids though, which for me, looking on the outside, I'm like, mermaids? What? Who believes in mermaids? But then I've got my whole Mandela thing, like sitting here being a
Mhm.
hypocrite, you know, and trying to separate myself from it.
I think I also had the thought about, like the Western Enlightenment emphasis on rationality and logic and reasoning as
Mm.
being the primary modes of like the pinnacle of this is why we're so evolved. Look at us. We can do a logic model, Like this is what humans were made for. God made us to do logic models. Like that kind of stuff.
Mhm,
And I wonder, like anthropology brain going on, what this looks like in other contexts and
mhm,
and how that ties into the how people feel about their that being the central point of their identity, like that being what gives them value or worth is their brain
mm. That would be interesting to look in at it from that way. Yeah.
as a
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
know, someone really smart out there, maybe a head type. You're
Mhm,
smart people.
mhm.
I'm definitely playing to your ego right now, but do a
Yeah.
study and then let us know.
Mhm.
I'm too lazy to do this study. I'm not going to do it myself.
How do you feel about so for me, I think that five, sixes, and sevens are probably the most likely to create conspiracy theories that will get like long-term runs, you know? Like that will end up getting more people into them because I think we could be kind of persuasive with it, like, look at the logic. Um, and
I
so
don't think it has any correlation, personally. I think that the creation of conspiracy theories, well, here's my like little tin hat, um, that particularly with like the modern stuff we're seeing with QAnon and shit, that's like politically motivated. So I wouldn't say that there's any, I wouldn't assume in like that the person who created it had to also believe it, you know? I wouldn't assume that they believe it. I wouldn't assume that they don't believe it. I wouldn't assume that it's even really like all that grounded in facts because it is fundamentally a question of belief. And you could get people to believe random wild shit and then throw whatever you want on it after the fact.
that's true.
It's
Uh,
aligning with worldviews.
and I do think so the reason I kind of came to that conclusion is, because like, Alex Jones, Alex Gay Frogs Jones, turning the frickin' frogs gay Jones, is most likely a six and is added into the group of sixes by the Enneagram Institute. If you go on their website, it has like famous people who are sixes, and he is listed in there. And I was going through and like thinking about like other prominent people who like because I've watched a lot of like Mandela effect videos. All of them are sixes. They're all sixes. Um, and so I don't know. I think I wouldn't be surprised if you like took a percentage of like every person who had ever created a conspiracy theory. I wouldn't be
If it was
surprised if it was if the highest percentages were in 5, 6, 7. That is not to say that other types couldn't create them, especially if they did want to pull political strings or things like that. But yeah,
that those are maybe the people who drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak.
yeah. Mhm. But I think they're also I think they can sometimes be the most convincing because they have drunk the Kool-Aid. They're,
Yeah,
and if they're a 5, a 6, or a 7, they're not going to be emotionally having drunk the Kool-Aid. Like they're not going to be emotional in their outward like how they present it. It's going to be still rational, but having
like it's
completely
just facts.
mhm. Yeah.
Like
So,
anything is ever just facts.
mhm. I also before we leave this, I just wanted to um quote one of my favorite comments that a person left, which was, "This feels like it was written by a heart-centered person, dot, dot, dot." Um, and I think the dot, dot, dot was, like, them trying to, like, at me because I have
Throw
5
shade.
wing like, I have 5 wing 4 as my, like, flare. Um, there's no way. There's no way I'm heart-centered. And I have no idea how they got that. I don't know. I don't think the way I phrased it was heart-centered either.
They felt called out and they wanted to throw shade back.
Okay, so moving on to what this video is actually about, because we've spent a long time on that question. um, so, what are triads? Just to begin with, if you're jumping in and you have no idea what triads are, and you're just starting to get into the Enneagram. So, there are several different types of triads, and it has to do with the law of threes and how most like in the Enneagram, we can divide groups of into groups of threes, and those three they'll share the same kind of trait or behavior or something. And so the triads that we're focusing on today are specifically the intelligence centers. And today's episode is going to be on the head and fear intelligence center. And it's also important to note that everyone will have access to every single center and every single triad, no matter what triad we're going to. But that the one that is assigned to our type is the one that will um, uh, resonate the most with that person, and that person will have either the most problem with that or use it the most often, or depending on what kind of triads you're looking at. And so today with head and fear, um, we're going to be focusing on the head and fear types, which are 5, 6, and 7. Um, so, have anything to add?
No, I think that that pretty much covered it.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'll just jump into specifically what the head and fear intelligence centers are. So, uh, fives, sixes, and sevens tend to be inside our head a lot. Um, and our main fixation tends to be on fear, whether we realize it or not. And so we have a couple different ways that we can interact with that, and each type interacts with it differently. Um, but we all in the head center, um, we some of the things that we share are that quote we are expressed as a cool energy that relates to rationality, information, ideas, planning, and prioritizing. People who are predominantly thinking centered tend to excel at analyzing issues and generating ideas based on a solid understanding of facts. um, so we can be kind of cool, very rational, um, just kind of in our heads as a head type. And so I have a nice quote here about like why we would be fives, like what happened in our development. So, quote, at some point in their development, fives, sixes, and sevens feel that they have lost these essential qualities, that they have lost contact with their inner guidance. They adopt a false belief that they have no inner support or confidence, leading to underlying feelings of fear and anxiety. They see the world as threatening and as a threatening and uncertain place. So, um, as head types, we then have to compensate for that and adjust and cope. And the way that we cope is, quote, to compensate five, sixes, and sevens, become very motivated to find sources of security and confidence. They try to anticipate and prepare for the future. They spend their time trying to find and maintain a sense of inner guidance and support. These types pursue mental strategies and or belief systems to create a false sense of security against anxiety. Yeah, so that's just kind of a brief rundown. Anything to add?
Um, I'm gonna kind of go on a tangent maybe.
Oh, okay.
Um, and maybe this will lead into our discussion of how each of the types interacts with fear. I've shown you the emotional cone before, right?
Yes. Hmm.
I, I'm just thinking about it's not any real conclusions, but maybe more of a question.
Hmm.
If you've got so the basic premise of this is you've got a cone of emotions, right?
Hmm.
And it's an emotional circle, but it also tracks depth and intensity.
Hmm.
And you've got some core basic emotions in this circle here. You've got rage, vigilance, ecstasy, admiration, terror, amazement, grief, and loathing. And obviously, all of your head types are hanging out in that terror, fear, apprehension, you know,
Hmm.
space. But I'm wondering what the different other flavors are because I feel like people dip their toes into like is that just me where I get the vibes of like sevens are terror mixed with a little bit of ecstasy, and sixes are terror mixed with vigilance. But what are fives?
I'm trying to find the cone. Give me one sec. Oh, okay, here. I found it.
You know, what's that five sprinkle flavor?
All right, so I'm looking at the cone now. And so terror, you have
Obviously,
it.
they're all hanging out in terror, fear, or apprehension. Apprehension is sort of the lightest version of it, and it
Hmm.
gets deeper. And at deep seated, it's terror.
Okay. And so what did you say,
I said sevens to me feel like they're hanging out in this terror, admiration, ecstasy bit, right?
okay.
Or maybe terror, amazement, ecstasy. And
Mm.
it feels like sixes are hanging out in that terror, vigilance, admiration. But where are fives?
I
It's
could
hard for me to
s
clock that.
I could see fives in terror and rage,
Ooh,
and
maybe that's why we get along.
terror and also grief. Like the terror, rage, grief, and loathing kind of aspect. Less so the loathing. And the reason I could see that is I go to 8 a lot, and I
Okay.
have noticed that I sometimes you would think that so when we say growth or integration, it tends to be when we're in a good place, but that's not always the case. And the more healthy that we become, the more we can access 8 in times of like stress or um, distress. Um, and so I sometimes find s- that I will go to 8 when I am feeling intense feelings of like fear.
What's the counterpoint between rage and fear for you? What does the rage give you?
Rage is something that I can hang on to instead of the terror. And so we're going to get into this is that we all try to escape that fear in some form. And so for each so like the heart and shame center, they try and escape that shame some way. Anger, they try and escape that anger some way and how they express that or whatever. So fives, um, we kind of go inward or like go to 8 and we ruminate on it or think on it. But I'm thinking about times that I went to 8 during like sometimes incredible times of like distress. Um, so I'll share this story and I'm gonna put a trigger warning in here. Um, so uh, go to the show notes if you want to skip this. I'll put where the trigger ends if you want to look at that. Um, but basically, I got drugged at a party once, and I was kind of going in and out of like fuzziness. And once I became aware enough to be like, this is a very dangerous situation, I am incredibly terrified. I kind of went to 8 and like had my pepper spray, was very determined to get away from this person even though they were like following me. Um and yeah, so like I went to that rage place because it's easier for me to hang on to that than to hang on to the actual fear itself. Cuz and I can take that away from other things. So like there's some existential fear that I have about like global warming and like where this country is going. And it's very easy for me to hang on to like rage at the injustice I see. It's easier for me to hang on to that integration point of 8. And I think that what you're clocking with the sevens is they're afraid of future and afraid of pain. So they like to hang on to that ecstasy and admiration. And sixes are afraid of losing their security, so they like to hang on to like vigilance.
What's so terrifying about fear for a head type? Because it seems to me fundamentally when you're talking about hanging on to other emotions, you're avoiding it. You're afraid of feeling fear.
That's true. And I might relate to this differently than the other head types. So I'll put that disclaimer out there because I am a 5, and so I'm kind of putting my own 5 spin onto those. Um, but I think it's that fear is deeply attached to our um, greatest fears and desires. So, like, clearly they're all fears for everyone. But like a heart type, where their greatest fear is that they are unlovable, that has to do with more shame, right? And outward opinions and things like that. It's less of like an I'm scared fear than like a shame fueled fear. And you can kind of track that theme with pretty much all the other types. Whereas with sevens, fear of pain and fear of like missing out and that kind of thing is a more deep seated, like actual, like fear, like terror. Um, Fear of insecurity is more of a deep seated fear in the like, I could die if I don't have this kind of security, or I could face food insecurity or things like this. For me, my how I relate to my fear of incompetence and not being capable is that if at any point I'm not capable, I kind of immediately go to the worst of what could happen. Like if I don't have the tools to interact with the world around me, the worst possible cases could happen. If I don't have the tools, if I'm incompetent at driving a car, I could crash that car and die or kill other people. So I feel like our fears are more wrapped up in what people would traditionally see as fears.
So you took it and notched it up to 11, essentially.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, and I think it just has to do with what, like I said, what our fears deal with. So I don't know. And I was reading an article about that. So like it contrasted us with like the shame centers, and that's why I brought up the two, where like, because that's essentially what they said was that twos, their fear is less fear, it's more shame because they feel that they're unlovable, which is other people's opinions. Threes fear that they aren't valuable, but that's not going to like cause anybody bodily harm. It's an outward shame direction. Or sorry, threes. I don't know if I think I might have said fours. But then fours feel that they don't have like a concrete identity, or a worthwhile identity, which is shame related. You're not going to really die or have bodily harm happen if you don't have an identity. So, moving on to fives, which is my type. So that's interesting. So, and before we go into that real quick, so for every type in an intelligence center, one of those in the intelligence center is going to be the internalized version, one is going to be the externalized version, and one is going to be the repressed version. So, for fives, we are the internalized version. Um, and so, quote, type fives react to fear by retreating into their mind and reducing their personal needs. They need to master something to feel safe and tend to observe their surroundings from distance in order to make a clear analysis of the situation. And I do like the way that this quote is phrased because they need to master something to feel safe. And every other thing that we talked about, there was never really talking about um, the need to feel safe. So, like with twos, they don't want to be lovable in order to feel safe. They want to be lovable in order to combat that fear of shame and
Right.
combat the shame that they have. So, whereas the fives, sixes, and sevens, it's literally the need to feel safe. We aren't feel.
Physical, actual safety.
Uh huh. Um, Yeah. So,
Do you relax ever?
yeah, I do.
Did
Um,
is that a head type? Can y'all when do you feel safe?
and see, here's the thing. There are definitely times when there have been periods of just long stretches. where like when I finally relaxed, I was like, I literally have not been relaxed in like 3 months. Like when I finally let the tension out.
Mhm.
So I do relax. I have to feel. I mean, literally, it's that I have to feel confident. Like I have to feel in kind of like control of like my situation. So, for instance, tax season, worst season for me, and it's not like I fully support taxes. I fully support higher taxes. I will pay whatever taxes you want. Our tax season is so confusing and I don't feel competent and I am constantly anxious over the fact that I might get audited over my like $12,000 income. Like yeah, the IRS is really gonna audit me and come after
Right.
me for that.
That they're gonna come after you.
Yeah, for my measly ooh,
Alyssa is like that with so we're both making like not any money right now,
mhm,
and we're on Snap, and she is very hyper vigilant about making sure we observe rules to the letter about
mhm,
what we are supposed to do with it, just because she is concerned like, well, if you fuck that up, first of all, they take away your support, and we do need that, and second of all, it's potentially they make you pay it back. And she's like, I'm not gonna fucking risk that, no way.
mhm, and that's like me during tax season is just especially this tax season was the worst because they never sent me my 1099-G in the mail and they're like, "Oh, we'll send it to you," cuz see I had to change my address. And
Hmm.
then I called in and I'm like, "Here's my new address." And they were like, "Okay, yeah, it's in the system." And then I called back in and I was like, "I haven't received it yet." And they were like, "Oh, well, is this your address?" And I was like, "No, I've changed it." And so they're like, "Okay, well, we'll put that in the system for you. We'll send it out." And I
Ugh.
call back in again and it's still the old address and so like the third time um, she was like, "Oh, well, you can just download it online." And the instructions she gave me were wrong. And in fact, in big, bold red letters, it was like, "You can't download your unemployment one here. Like, you can't do that." And I was like, "Well, hmm." So it took me a good hour and a half to 2 hours to actually download this one form. We're in mid March, like, literally, taxes were due in, like, a month from the day I finally downloaded this, and I had been stressed about it for months because I like to get them as soon as I get all my W-2s, I wanna get my taxes in case there's a problem, so they can notify me, so I don't have to be audited or anything like that, and I was just stressed. I was and then I finally finished it, and I was like, "I can breathe again, and my taxes have been accepted, and everything is fine, and I am relaxed again." And we're gonna do it again next January.
Hmm.
uh,
I think it's interesting. This is another tangent. I take us on a lot of tangents, I'm sorry, but not really.
it's a
I enjoy
banter
it.
podcast, so
I think it's interesting to think about fear. I mean, because I'm listening to you talk about all this stuff, and I'm thinking, this is all like anxiety fundamentally is about the future,
mhm,
you know,
mhm,
and about it being unknowable.
mhm.
Um, and I wonder if we could you map one to one future, present, past? Because I think you could. I think you could say head types are about the future, body types are about the present, and heart types are about the past.
Oh, 100%. And I think I think I've read stuff like that of like we're too
Oh, well, then I'm not smart then. I thought of something that someone else thought about a long time before I did. I've brought nothing new to the conversation.
well, no, you've brought new stuff and we can probably add it to the book that we'll probably keep putting off writing and everything. And we'll actually probably end up never writing it now that I'm in a pessimistic mode. I started thinking about taxes is what happened.
Nothing is certain except taxes and death. That's what all
Exactly.
head types think. Was he a head type?
Exactly. Huh?
Was he a head type?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Uh, but yeah, taxes. Sorry, taxes. Shutter. I got dragged back into it. I got derailed.
We're moving on.
Okay.
You're in analysis paralysis.
Yes. So here is I have another quote about fives. So, fives tend to over express their thinking and substitute thinking for doing. Fives see the world as threatening and uncertain, so they focus their thinking inward, hoping to understand it. Fives believe if they sufficiently study the world, they will understand it. Once they understand it, they will have the confidence to act and cope with the outer world. Unfortunately, fives get stuck in analysis paralysis. Try saying that 5 times fast. Where every answer they generate raises more questions, feeling hella called out, which they must answer. Like the other members of this center, five seek security because they feel the world is very uncertain. And this quote is too long, so I'm cutting it off there. But yeah, I just feel hella called out by that. It's like I every time I get an answer, it's just more questions.
It's I mean, that's good because there's nothing wrong with that, right?
I guess not. Especially if I'm in a
It's
relaxed state, because then those
it's
questions aren't necessarily bad.
yeah, but the problem is if it's leading to anxiety that actively makes you unhappy because you're then so stuck that you aren't allowed to do things.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with some questions.
Alright, so moving on, now we're going to hit
The
sixes, which
sixes. Can I
they're
talk about
the
sixes?
yes, and I want to get because you live in six a lot.
I visit.
You
I
visit.
I go on I would call it a vacation, but it's more like uh I don't have a good analogy. It's not fun. Vacations are supposed to be fun. This is not by choice. I am type 9. I disintegrate to type 6. So distant cousins, maybe. Sixes are the repressed type. If you look at that Enneagram circle doodad, in the middle is an equilateral triangle. That is the 3, 6, and 9. They are the center of their respective intelligence centers. So the 6 is the head, is the center of the head center. Um, and what that means is they are simultaneously the most in tune with and detached from their fear. And this sort of dissonance is literally represented in one of the cool things about sixes that like only sixes really do is that they are phobic and counterphobic. And that means that some sixes um, manifest that fear more directly as visible fear, and some sixes push against the fear in a counterphobic way and act out to sort of prove that it you can't control me. Um, that's my interpretation of it, anyways. That's the six in my brain.
Mhm. But no, that's
Um,
that's pretty much completely right. Especially both of my siblings are sixes.
one's
And
phobic,
for
one's counterphobic.
yeah, the more I think about it, which is so interesting because even though like the counterphobic one like pushes outwardly against authority, they both went into the military to seek that like security of the military authoritarian kind of figure in their life. And it's very interesting how they interact. However, there might be some genderedness to it. So, for instance, my sister is constantly on the verge of getting in trouble with her superiors for back talking. But also, she does face a lot more sexism in the workplace. Whereas my brother is just content to do pretty much whatever. Like, he doesn't have very many complaints.
Just living his life.
He's just living his life. So that might be gendered, though. I don't know. Because
Yeah. Well,
military is still kind of,
military.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah.
they
Um,
have because they're simultaneously the most in touch and removed from their head center. They have a hard time getting in touch with their thinking and their inner guidance. Um, they focus inward to avoid external threats like their fives, but they have serious doubts. And so they seek reassurance from outside authorities. Um, but you know, when you're just constantly questioning shit, you also start to doubt that, and so it can lead to a lot of back and forth. Um, and this is where start talking about your conspiracy theories. Because fundamentally it comes down to belief and looking for something to believe in, having a clear set of rules and beliefs that allowed them to cope with the anxiety of feeling constantly insecure in themselves, like not in the heart insecureness way, but in the actual physical, emotional, um, like everything way.
Mm.
They feel they have to earn that security. They feel like they have to do their part for the authority for it to take care of them. Uh, and you have a little thing here about sixes are constantly aware of their anxiety and always react against it. Sometimes they rely on their authority to allay their fears. Sometimes they will courageously confront their fears directly. And that's the phobic counterphobic
Mhm.
sort of dualism.
Yeah. You ready to move on to sevens?
Yeah,
All right, moving on to sevens. You are going to have a little bit more experience with sevens because you are dating one.
I am.
My current boss is a seven, though, so maybe I can bring in
You
some of
go to
that.
seven.
And I also go to
We
seven.
can tag team this.
Yeah.
They're very external,
So what happens with seven?
afraid of being hurt in any way possible. Can I share a story about my
Yes.
partner? I think it's funny. I don't. Well, I that's mean. Um, I was an athlete throughout most of my life up through college. I played college athletics. Um, very used to working out. My partner's very not used to it. And she was doing some housework, fixing our sink because I don't have any handy capabilities. She is very competent though. Um, and she was squatting to fix the sink, and her legs were sore. And she was texting me during work, like, my legs are broken. This sucks. I hate this. So, she was just complaining about it a lot, because it's like sevens in pain. So
Hmm.
this morning I went out and bought her a foam roller, and I was like, here, just roll out your legs. It's fine. Just roll them out. Roll them out.
Very cute.
But that's the level of, and not to say that all sevens don't do exercise and stuff, but that's the level of, like, I don't want to feel any discomfort in my body, not even muscle soreness.
Which is very interesting because I would like to see how all the types interact with exercise. I think so. My six siblings both were very into sports.
It's about the
And
teamwork. It makes the dream work.
I don't necessarily know if it's that for them.
That's
I
what it is
think
for me.
possessing physical strength for a six can be very appealing because then you don't necessarily need outward physical support, you kind of, because I don't know, both of my siblings are very into working out. They've always been very into working out. Um, and I don't know, that could just be them. That could very much just be them, but I'm trying to
I feel
think
like
of
that
like,
tracks with sixes that I know.
yeah, I don't know. If you're a six, chime in. How do you relate to exercise? Do you?
Send us an email, tweet at us. If
Mm-hmm.
tweet us your type and how you feel about exercising.
Mm-hmm. Um, as a five, um, I love certain types of exercise. I love tennis. It was very head oriented. I love hiking. It gets me into my mind. I also,
Biking?
um, I
Are
don't
you a
have as
big
much
biking person?
experience with biking. I think I would
I feel
like it.
like you would like it. It's kind of like running, except
Hmm.
you get to go more places.
Yeah. And that's the one thing I do. So I have kind of figured out how to like push myself into like eight mode, you know?
Hmm.
And that is listening to like rap music, specifically like girl. Have you heard of Ashley Go?
No.
I'm gonna send you some of her songs, but I will listen, especially like Stupid Boy. Like I will listen to that, and it sends me straight into eight mode. And I don't know. I really like listening to it, and then I will go and like run, and like it kind of just forces me into my body, I guess. Um, but I can't be like unless I'm in 8 mode, I'm not into like heavy exercise. And even then I can only stay in heavy exercise mode for like short bursts while I'm still in 8 and I'm still like vibing with the music.
At this point, it's been over a year since I've been in a gym, and I am at the point where I'm like, I might bite the bullet and spend the $100 a month if it means I get to go back to exercising.
Is that like your do you not have like a Planet Fitness near you?
We have stuff, but like, you know, it it's they're gyms, and previously I uh, didn't trust it because it was COVID,
Mm,
mostly, and I work in education, so I'm in the process of getting vaccinated. Uh, but I just like for me, I cannot get myself to exercise if I don't have some sort of I need to tap into the three too.
mm.
Like I need to tap into having people look at me, which
Ah,
seems so vain, but like that's why sports was great for me because I would show up and I would be like, you know what, Caden, you're a leader on the team. You're going to go there. You're going to be energetic. You're going to pump other people up. You're going to come into it with the mindset that this is what you do,
mm,
and that makes it so much easier. But there's no reason for me to do that. Like it's just my living room, you know?
yeah,
I can go lay on my couch.
yeah. And I find the exact opposite helpful. Like I don't want anyone to watch me when I'm working out.
I kind of feed off of it. I'm a little bit narcissistic like that.
Mm. I'm jiggly, so that might be a little bit. Of...
I think it also probably has something to do though with like how you grew up and what kind of stuff you like Alyssa didn't do any sports stuff growing up.
hmm
She's like, no, I don't want to do that. And her parents didn't push her into it, and uh, all the like fitness stuff that she got was gym class where they like were like run a mile, but we won't teach you how to stretch. Like
Yeah. Oh my God, I hated
the
gym
way
class.
that people interact with wellness
hmm
uh, is just is different depending on where you're coming from. This is a very off-topic way to say sevens may or may not really like exercise because they are uncomfortable with any sort of unpleasant any sort of unpleasantness, emotional pain, grief, you know, it's just they will do whatever they fucking can to avoid that.
Which gets us into how they are the external type because they want to avoid pain at any and all costs. So they will externally pursue things that result in pleasure or fun and enjoyment. And so I have a quote here. Sevens tend to underexpress their thinking and substitute doing for thinking. Sevens see their inner
God.
world as threatening. Issues of sadness and loss and grief cause great anxiety. Sevens avoid dealing with these issues by fleeing their inner world and trying to keep preoccupied with the outer world. As a result, they focus their thinking outward, keeping their mind busy with new plans and ideas. But yeah, so they.
The highly relate, and I've seen happening the underexpress your inner thinking,
Mhm.
but exactly in the opposite way, where Alyssa knows that she does this, and so what she'll do is she'll try to compensate by explaining a lot,
Mm,
and then you'll get to the point where like I get it, it's fine, I can deal with it, it's okay, I got it, you know. And she's like, no, 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 but like I want to make sure that like you get
mhm.
you like I'm communicating well. I'm like, there, it's okay.
All right, so let's move on to some challenges and strengths. So, some challenges for each type. So, fives, we can be detached, isolated, overly intellectual, withholding, and we can hoard. That goes back into our like fixations and sins and stuff. Sixes,
Avarice.
yeah, avarice. Sixes can be anxious, hypervigilant, pessimistic, contrary, overactive, and have an overactive imagination.
I did also read that because it was cut in the line as overactive and imagination.
Yeah.
Sixes, negative imagination, apparently.
Sevens can be self-absorbed, dispersed, uncommitted, impatient, unrealistic. Oh, that uncommitted kind of just popped up because my boss, my current boss right now, I'm not sure how many times she's been married, at least two, and she's got a boyfriend now. But like she just wanted to have her life. Like we were talking today about how one year she was just like, fuck it, I'm moving to Ireland and just lived in Ireland for a year and then just noped back. And she's had so many different jobs. Um, where like she just works at it till she gets, I guess, bored, I guess. It's more
Does
like
she have
she's
an
got
eight
to,
wing?
oh yeah. Oh
Because I
yeah.
think the six wing like really changes everything because you're just so anxious about security that you're like, I'm actually not going to do a lot of the things that I want to do because bad things could happen.
But yeah, so she has the eight wing, so it like actually gets her out. I love working with her because it like we both kind of meet at 7 and sometimes at 8 with her like wing and my integration point, and it's just we vibe.
Nice.
um
I don't work with any sixes or threes or anything.
mhm. Oh
I
my
work
god.
with a two and a one, and I think that she's a 5 to 8, but I've been questioning lately whether she's an 8 going to 5.
Mm, yeah. If my boss were younger, because she's in her
Hmm.
60s now, if she were younger, we would tear it up. Like, I
I
love.
was really not expecting her to be in her 60s. I thought she was like in her 30s or something.
No, but like the stories I've described to you about her before sound like she's much younger because she just goes. No, she's like 60 some. Like,
Damn.
yeah,
I wish I could say that I want to be that cool when I'm 60 something, but really I don't. I want to own a house.
I do want to own a house. Um,
That's my big goals and dreams. That's that 6 coming through.
uh,
Taxes.
all right. So, strengths. Fives are scholarly, stroking my ego right now. Um, perceptive, yes, I am. Thoughtful, I mean, if you say so. Self-reliant, yes. Oh, okay. Our next episode is on Tritypes, and I need to make sure that I to pull it over for evidence in the Tritypes. Anyway, self-reliant, dependable, respectful, and calm in a crisis, which is very weird because we often get that we're not good at making decisions in crisis. Like that's I think a stereotype of us. But I think I'm as long
As long
like
as it's someone else's crisis, you're fine.
yes, as long as it's someone else's crisis, I'm fine. I can be objective. I'm good. I'm cool in a crisis. When it's my crisis, I'm still fairly calm on the outside. Like I've retreated in. I'm like, let's gotta figure this out. We may have to do it fast. It's more the time crunch on me. The bigger the time crunch, the more anxiously like the more anxious I present outside. All right. So sixes are perceptive, sensitive, loyal, warm, witty, courageous, and they have great strategic thinking. Um,
Like Ronald Weasley.
yeah. No,
Sevens.
wait. Ronald, listen. Ronald
3.
is a 3.
We've had this conversation like 5 times before. I can never remember.
Yeah, I don't know if we've actually had it on the podcast. We should actually do an episode where we discuss the types. Because so most of the time, if anyone has a theory about like a character in like a movie or something, I'm like very lenient because I think a lot of it is guessing their motivation based on their behaviors.
Hmm.
For Ronald Weasley, he looks
Joanne's pretty
in.
heavy-handed with that.
Well, the thing is, no, he gets we see his deepest desire. He tells us when he looks into the mirror of Erised.
Hmm.
And when he looks into that mirror, his greatest desire is to be seen as having achievements. He's holding the house cup, he's head boy. He wants to be seen and recognized. And so this is the only character I will throw hands about. Ron Weasley is a 3. He just
He's not
might
very
be,
good at being a 3, is he?
well, he might just be well integrated because like he goes to 6, but I
He's
think
well
that,
integrated.
well, I yes and no. I think he goes to 6 a lot. And I think that's why people get, because I think Harry and having that sense of family brings sixness out of him in that growth. Like he does go to growth. He's willing to sacrifice for Harry and stuff like that. But he is very much a shame focused, image focused person.
I'll buy the Shane image
Mhm.
stuff. Yeah. You've convinced me. Wanted to give you a hard time. But sevens, on the sevens, like adventurous, playful, imaginative, energetic, optimistic, quick thinking.
All right. And then some advice for the head types, which I don't know why I even included this. It's just because I kept finding advice for different types, but they've all been the same. It's always just be in the moment. And so, like, for fives, it's like stop and assess your feeling and your gut instincts and try and just separate it. And so, yeah,
Yeah, that's like the advice for humans, period, I think.
yeah, that's honestly, that's most of Enneagram advice. So I'm not gonna, unless there is very pertinent advice that I can give, I probably won't add that section in to the other um triads.
Well, here's the thing. Um, here's the thing. Stole your line. Isn't that your line?
Yeah. Here's the thing. The
Here,
when we were in Japan, because like a lot of people, English wasn't their first language, so they would pick up more easily on like little ticks that we have.
yeah.
And mine were here's the thing and listen. Um,
Listen,
listen.
listen. Our next episode is going to be on tritypes.
Um, so I had thought of I thought we would just leave the question of the month open to like what is your tri type and how do you feel about them? If you
I think that that's also a good spot to sort of like what, but tritypes, yay, nay,
mhm.
say,
Mhm. So yeah,
what?
so do you believe in tri types and if you do, what's your tri type? But yeah.
Yeah,
So we'll just wrap up there. Leave us a review, comment on our YouTube videos, tweet at us, email us. Honestly, we just crave human contact, so
oh, what a mood.
any form of human contact. Bye.
Bye.